Welcome to On the Chain. This is Chip here with Chip. That's right. Jeff is on special assignment. Be flying the airplane solo today as we have a great venture into all the news that is blockchain. Going to touch on some NFT kind of news that's going on out there and some exciting stuff. Also, too, scam bankman fraud in the clink. Good thing, bad thing? Going to get your reaction on that. Also, big airdrop coming for XRP holders. That's right. We haven't heard the word airdrop associated with XRP in a while. Of course, we know the other one very famously was the Flare. Before that, the Songbird drop. But we're going to get into that and a whole bunch more. You guys ready to do this? Let's go.
Welcome to On the Chain.
And welcome everybody to On the Chain. Go ahead and drop in the comments where you guys are coming in from all over the world. We have a worldwide audience, which is fantastic. I love it. Jeff and I always like it to go in the comments and see what everybody's talking about. Everybody was here early, got a little bit of a late start, but that's sometimes how it works. But I see a lot of people coming in from all over the place. Jim D, good to see you. Still trying to work on that issue, man. Have a little patience. We got David Brown coming in from Savannah, Georgia, which is great. Liz Taylor's here, saying that scam should have been in jail. Well, we'll get to that in a little bit too, but everybody's coming in from all over the place here, which is great. Saratoga, New York, beautiful. Harlem, Holland, beautiful. Everyone's coming in from everywhere. Scotland in the house here. Drinking some whiskey last night. So it's great to see Liz here early. I know it's early for you. Good morning, OTC. And let's jump into some news here. I want to start this off. I think maybe Liz sort of gave the preference here of what's to come here. But look at this here. So judge sends FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried to jail. Says crypto mogul tampered with witnesses. So, it's kind of funny that the darling here who was going to, I'm trying to say this in a nice way, but let's just say that in Congress, very friendly. There's a lot of shenanigans going on with the money system, and he was funneling money into campaigns on both sides of the house. You could say, well, it was the blue team, it was the red team, it was both teams, okay? And the last time I heard, I think there were two that gave it back. Now, there might have been more since then. I think it was one Democrat, one Republican that returned any of the campaign finance money that was given to them in support by Sam Bankman-Fried, or I should say FTX. And if you think about this whole thing, there's a lot more to unpack here, just because Sam Bankman-Fried here was doing a lot with obviously the commingling of funds. But there was, I always thought it was kind of weird that it was like every celebrity is FTX and the Super Bowl commercials are FTX and FTX and FTX. Down here in Miami, the FTX Arena where the Miami Heat play was FTX Arena and FTX this, and everything was branded FTX, and other college stadiums FTX. I was like, where's all this money coming from? Like, where's are they making that much money on an exchange, really? But even looking at someone like Coinbase, who had that Super Bowl commercial with that little bouncing thing with the little QR code, which everybody criticized, but hell, they got a lot of people scanning that QR code and it was bouncing all around the screen. But even like a large entity like Coinbase in the US, now you got to always wonder too, like, why did they set up offshore anyway? They set up right off the East Coast here in the Bahamas is where they were really located, but also private meetings with Gary Gensler. It's like, well, some of that's public, some of it's not. There's a couple calendar entries that we know about. There's probably a bunch more that we don't know about. But why was somebody, as Gensler likes to say, somebody who was offshore? It was an offshore entity. We only regulate U.S. companies. All right, so why were you meeting with them then? And why was he coming in? And why was, why were certain members of Congress, like Maxine Waters, blowing kisses to him as he was going out? Thank you for the funds. I mean, this is just corruption at its finest. I mean, it really absolutely is. To see, a guy like this who 73 viewers, 27 likes. Come on, guys, hit that like button. Let's do this. Thank you, Hans, for that. Appreciate that. Got Australia in the house as well. Also, big event coming up in Australia. I'll get to that a little bit later as well. But But a lot of stuff that happened around this entire scam, bank and fraud type of thing. I think we're going to find out more details. Now, I know a lot of people have been disappointed when they said, like, oh, the Justice Department, they dropped a couple, they dropped charges against them. But again, they didn't file it properly. And because it's an entity not located in the U.S., there were certain procedures they had to follow. Did they do it on purpose? I don't know. The speculation here, at least on the chain with when we've talked about this and unpacked this was, well, is Sam Bankman fraud? Was he somebody who would end up in jail? And a lot of us kind of thought he's going to get a sweetheart deal, right? We've seen this happen where if you have an in somewhere, you kind of seem like if you're related to a resident in the White House, sort of like everything's like smooth sailing, get the green light, you don't have to stop. You pass go right away, collect your money, and you keep going to the tune of millions of dollars. In this case here, our speculation was something else had happened. So this kind of took me a little bit by surprise. But he left the federal courtroom in handcuffs on Friday, which was yesterday. Judge revoked his bail after concluding that the fallen cryptocurrency whiz repeatedly tried to influence witnesses against him. Uh-oh, that's not a good sign. Bankman-Fried drooped his head as Judge Lewis Kaplan explained at length why he believed the California man had repeatedly pushed the boundaries of his $250 million bail package to the point where Kaplan could no longer ensure the protection of the community, including the prosecutor's witnesses, unless the 31-year-old was behind bars. So, Liz, you said go right straight to jail. He went straight to jail, into the clink. And it's funny, this whole thing about the clink. We have this phrase over here, like the clink. And I was like, what's the clink? I was walking with my buddy a couple years back, and we were walking around London. He goes, you heard of the clink? And I was like, yeah, I've heard of the clink. He's like, well, there it is right there. That's the clink. It's jail, right? I mean, it's, but I always heard like, I never really, we just pick up phrases. We don't really know what we're talking about. It's like, yeah, that's the clink. I was like, okay. So yeah, he went right into jail after the hearing ended. Bankman-Fried took off his suit jacket, and then he turned his watch and his other personal belongings over to his lawyers. The clanging of handcuffs could be heard as his hands were cuffed in front of him. And then, this is the difference. White collar criminals, they get, basically the handcuffs in front of them. If you are a dangerous, felon or criminal, then you get the handcuffs behind your back, right? Because obviously they don't think, he's not a threat. He's not going to run away. But you would never see somebody who was convicted of, murder or something else like this. They would never get their handcuffs. So again, another sort of, yeah, they cuffed him, but they cuffed him with his hands in front of him. A spectacular fall for a man who said prosecutors say portrayed himself as a savior of the cryptocurrency industry as he testified before Congress and hired celebrities including Larry David, Tom Brady, Steph Curry to promote his businesses. And, those are happier times right there when he's walking around smiling and everything else. But or was that the same day? Actually, has the same suit jacket on, the tie. It's just so weird that a guy you want to be at least somewhat put together when you head to court. It's like he's disheveled. The shirt's all untucked. The tie's not tied properly. It's not even steamed. Like it was like probably sitting in a ball in a corner somewhere. Not to get too much into this, but here's Brad Mills says, "Are you kidding? The whole FTX thing was pre-planned, and it was the mechanism behind the Democrats paying for the midterms." Yeah, you could say that, Brad, but also too, there was a lot of Republicans on the dole as well, and a lot of Republicans did not give that money back. But other things too is that if you look at that funding package that we sent overseas, let's put it that way, that money kind of came back into the fold. So a lot of that money, there's other things that happened to that money that was funneled around and paid for things. So you could say that Devon Steve says, I was beginning to think SBF was never going to get lifted. So, and this is Sliss wants to know, did he cry? Sorry, not sorry. And what's happening right now is even a bigger travesty. If we think about the fact, I keep hearing the amount of money since the bankruptcy attorneys stepped in, hundreds of millions of dollars they are eroding to pay themselves to handle the bankruptcy. This in itself is kind of a sham. It's a great way for I think there's two law firms that are coming in there, and they're charging premium dollar for a bankruptcy. And where are these funds coming from? Some of the reclaimed funds from us, right? From investors, retail investors who put their hard-earned money into it, obviously coerced a little bit by trusting celebrities. And I'm not going to blame the celebrities. Did the celebrities know? Did someone like Steph Curry, who plays basketball for a living, or someone like Tom Brady, who's a quarterback, it's won like the most, I think won 6 championships. Do they know? No. I mean, they're hired. They go in there, they say a bunch of pleasantries about it. But again, how do you think they feel? I mean, they were pretty much used to go in there and use their likeness to go in there and say, and Larry David famously did the FTX commercial, which was pretty funny. But again, here's somebody who, these are this is an actor, right? You get paid, go in, do a bit, do a little funny commercial, and that's kind of it. So Liz says that he's a psychopath. So there is a lot of weird stuff, and it's so funny that everybody's pretty much turned on him. But you want to save your own hide first, right? You're going to go ahead and try to do what you can to save yourself. So we have also Brad Mills says Maxine Waters and Gary Gensler, and no telling who else planned the whole FTX debacle. It does, Jeff and I have talked at length about this. The timings are very interesting, how this kind of broke down and how it went. But a lot of money was funneled into Congress. You had a lot of meetings going on. And like it was brought up at one of the hearings, you never saw someone like a Gary Gensler say, hey, we'd like to bring our team in there. Yeah, you're looking, they're having all these meetings, but they never look under the hood, right? So if you want to say you're not going to regulate an offshore exchange entity, but yet you're going to sit there and meet, and then also SBF was floating a lot of what, quote unquote, he would like to see as far as regulations that would also favor a company like, oh yeah, FTX. You had a lot of this going on. It was actually all this sort of scheming behind the scenes, but it never dawns on Gary Gensler to say like, hey, let's bring a team in there. Let's look in the books. Let's see what you really have going on, right? It was just all a trusted one way, which throws a lot of shade on what was really going on, right? To someone like Brad Mills who's pointing this out is saying, well, what was actually happening behind the scenes? Because it was all one way. If SBF's meeting with Gary Gensler and the SEC, and they're having these behind door sessions, and he's meeting with people like Maxine Waters, who, by the way, never dusted off one of the crypto bills. Warren Davidson's token taxonomy is sitting there since late 2017, 2018, never got touched, right? But here's Sam Bankman-Fried rolling in, and then we got that famously on that one hearing where after everyone was leaving, she's blowing him kisses. Highly inappropriate, highly inappropriate. We also have here Joe Buddy says they're Democrats, unipartists, Mitch Romney, Graham, etc. The MAGA Republicans, no MAGA Republicans got any of that FTX contributions. That's not true. If I pull up the list, I'll have to find the list. A couple of them did, and I don't believe they gave it back. So Biden will pardon SBF. Yeah, the list was actually somewhat surprising. I would say that it would be more of the rhinos, which RINO, which we talk about here in the States, meaning Republican in name only. So if you ever hear me talk about a rhino, RINO, it means Republican in name only, which is a nice way of saying they're pretty much Democrats, so, or at least on that side. We got here, Rashid Radke says, Gary and him were going to hand over the crypto industry to FTX, and nobody seems to talk about it. Yeah, it does have that sort of appearance. You got BZ jumping in here with the happy Saturday, guys. And smoke my first tri-tip today. Well, good for you, man. That's very good. You got BZ in the house, has Hans loaded. Sophie's in the house today. So there's a lot going on. Also, we got Zerptrip says, I remember seeing the FTX advertisements everywhere, and I never heard anything about this exchange. Seems super suspect to me right off the bat, and I'm glad I went with my gut. Uphold is still my go-to. Uphold gets a lot of respect from me, just personally, this again, my own personal opinion, because they didn't bend the knee to the SEC. They didn't waver. They didn't say, oh, no, hey, they said until we hear that XRP is a security, we're going to continue to have it on, we're going to continue to sell it. That's it. It was pretty simple. And that to me, I don't feel like sometimes Uphold gets enough credit. JP Terriat over there, who's the founder, I feel like to me, that was a bold move at a time where everybody was cowering and bending the knee, right? Ripple didn't bend the knee either. Ripple said, okay, let's suit up. Let's go get the best law firm. Let's get the best attorneys we can. Let's get ready for battle. They put down the battle, armor. They got the mace. They got the swords. They went in, and figuratively, of course, and they went and did battle, and they did not cower. They did not bend, and they knew they'd be on the right side of history. So you got to give that a lot of credit, man. So I'm just looking through some of the other comments here. So there's that story right there. Let's see what else we got in the grab bag today. Some other things I want to unpack here. Want to get to this other story too, that we haven't really had an airdrop, at least for XRP holders, since famously, of course, it was Flare in the end. But before that, on the testnet side of it, we were also issued Songbird, and that created a lot of controversy just because a lot of the exchanges have said, yes, absolutely, we will go ahead and issue for the Flare token for all of the holders of XRP. However, when they threw the Songbird in there, which I still think was a great idea and a great way to go, you want to stress test anything you want to release. If they had released that thing and it got hacked, project would have died right there on the vine, would have been dead, dead on arrival, right? But the key part of this was it didn't die on the vine, and they did stress test the hell out of it. I did do that successfully, but it caused a lot of controversy because a lot of people didn't get their Songbird, and people were pretty upset about that. I know Coinbase was late to the game and issuing, and I don't even know if they even went through and did, but some people held their XRP in exchanges. Others held it in self-custody. But let's get to this other story here. This is really interesting here. I want to talk a little bit about Evernode, which is a global permissionless layer 2 smart contract platform built on the XRPL. It's going to be coming soon, but there was a series of tweets that were put out here, and let's jump in here and take a look at these. But I think I've been following this project. We've been following here on the chain. Jeff and I have been looking at this a lot. And here we go. So Evernode put this series of tweets out. And this is funny because I actually laughed out loud when I read this. It's like, with a due sense of dread, we announce XRP holders airdrop. First details, XRPL snapshot date will be on Friday, September 1 at 6 p.m. AEST. And I don't know what A stands for. I know Eastern Standard Time, so I don't know what even the ASEST is. I just know AEST is Eastern Standard Time, which is the time zone that I live in, which is Florida, New York, that you're, Miami, but I don't even know what that, I look up that AEST and drop that in there what that means. I don't even know what that means. Read the following 5 posts for details. So I was like pretty excited about this. I was like, yay, this is great. So, on launch, we plan to airdrop 5,160,960. That's a weird number, right? It's like, let me think. I said, what kind of airdrop should we do? Should we do 5 million? Nah. Should we do 5.1 million? Nah. That's it. 5,160,960. I don't know where that came from, but I love weird numbers. I love off numbers. I always like to see something that's not quite, I don't like to see it flat across the board. So the fact that there's a couple zeros in there and some other things, I actually like this. It's weird. It's off the bat. I don't know where it came up. Now, Evers is the token. It's the 2 eligible XRP holders. The airdrop will involve a 2-step process: a snapshot of XRP holdings on the mainnet, which will occur on September 1 at 6 p.m., and then an airdrop to eligible accounts on the Hook sidechain based on their owners' XRP holders on the mainnet. So it's like, okay, well, what the hell does that mean? So because we'll launch on the Hook sidechain, and because that sidechain will include a burn to mint, we need to snapshot the XRP ledger before the Hook sidechain goes live. So we've chosen Friday, September 1 at 6 p.m. as the XRPL snapshot date. So what does that mean to you? That means that if you're holding, you have to, we'll get into a little more of that as we go through there, but we'll talk about this a little more. So 3 considerations. Number 1, first, you need to hold your XRP directly on chain. You can't be on an exchange because you'll have to clone your account on the Hook sidechain to claim an airdrop. So what that means is that if you do have your XRP on Uphold, not going to work. If you do, this is again by September 1. If you're self-custody, that's fantastic. But if you have it in the Sum wallet, okay, fine. But if it's sitting on an exchange, it's not going to work for this. So I'll just tell you guys, if it's something you want to participate in, you want to be eligible for this airdrop, make sure that you are not holding any XRP on an exchange at the time of the airdrop in September 1. So what else here? Yeah, okay, so here's the disclaimer. The airdrop is a gift. We'll use our best endeavors. We don't in any way promise or warrant that you'll receive any particular number of Evers for any reason or for no reason. We may decide to proceed with the airdrop. We may decide not to proceed with the airdrop in this manner or at all. And basically, they're giving themselves a little bit of space to say, hey, if this doesn't seem the right thing to do, we're not going to do it, right? For whatever reason, just like, hey, we're not going to do the airdrop. I think based on what I read up here, with the due sense of dread, I try to read like what's behind that. Okay, so you're announcing an airdrop. We know how airdrops have gone in the past. It's kind of like, we're going to announce this. What's the backlash going to be? How are people going to react to this? If you've been following this project, I think it's a phenomenal project. From everything we've covered here on the chain, I do think it's this smart contract, on the side chain and everything. I think it's fantastic. So I think it's going to bring a lot of versatility to the as far as the side chain is concerned. So XRP Darren had a question. He's like, well, question mark, do I just hold in my ledger, then clone on side chain? Will there be a tutorial, right? So he's basically asking about this. Evernode came back and said, yes, we imagine the sidechain team will explain how their cloning function works. And is holding in a Zum wallet safe? I'm thinking some of the thread posts, do we need to set up a trust line and have our XRP on chain? Maybe a silly question, but when does Evernode go live on the Hook sidechain? Well, it's going to be after September 1, right? They need to do the snapshot first, and then they'll go ahead and do it. Is cloning your ledger safe? Doesn't sound like it. Can tokens be distributed on sidechains, be transferred to the mainnet? So there's a lot of questions around this. I saw Moonchaser put this tweet out here, said to be eligible, and basically retweeting and commenting on it, saying, or I should re-Xing. It's not even Twitter anymore, right? It's X. So what are we saying? Xing, re-Xing? I think they did change what that means. It's I think it's called repost. Reposted it is how they, not a retweet, but it's a repost. So to be eligible for the Evers airdrop, self-custody your XRP, example, Zum and Wallet, they changed their name, by the XRP ledger snapshot date, and then read carefully the conditions via the thread attached. I came in here and said, it's super clear. It's not confusing at all. Super clear. And then Moonchaser said, well, we'll all be noobs, meaning newbies together, meaning new people, like kind of learning about what we're going to need to do. And then Evernode probably saw all this and then dropped this one pretty recently. And then it said, here is the XRP holder airdrop simplified. Number one, on September 1st, hold your XRP in an off-exchange account that you control through a Sum wallet or a similar non-custodial wallet option. Pretty simple. Number two, do nothing. Further instructions will follow when the sidechains launch. So the whole idea is that if you want to be eligible, you just have to have it on an off-exchange account in your XRP. Snapshots taken. Then we'll find out more and unpack more about actually how this works. What is this going to look like? What are we actually going to be doing when the sidechain happens? Because right now, to sit there and get into all the details, you do this, you do that. Obviously, there's some. It's going to take a little bit of a work on our part. What we're going to have to do to go ahead and make this happen. But here's Alchemist. Here's his simplified. I will not participate. Simplified. Alchemist, tell me why you won't participate in this. I want to hear that. Okay, so what I'm just looking at here. So AEST means another easy stupid token. I don't think that's what it means. I honestly don't think that's what it means, Desert Fox. You had me laughing there. What else do we have here? Let's see. Yeah, so BC says, my excitement for these drops is going downhill fast. Hard to know who's using the XRP community. And well, I think this one, yeah, but this is a little, yeah, you could say that. I kind of get where you guys are going with that. Brad Mills, some is very safe. Zamzaman, yeah, it's very safe. Well, here's the thing. It's just like anything. Safe in the sense that it's a self-custody wallet that sits on your phone and comes with a seed phrase, just like any other custody, off-chain wallet. And so when we think about this, and we start thinking about like, what do we have to actually do to participate in this? Look, I would love to hear your opinions. I want to go through some of your thoughts on this. Guys, I want you to drop like your thoughts. What are you thinking about this? Drop it in the comments. Is this a good thing, bad thing? Are you going to participate? This is something where if Jeff were here, he'd put up a poll, but for me to do that now would be a lot of dead air, and we're not going to hit that. But just kind of want to take an unofficial poll. Just want to hear, you guys going to participate? Just say, hey, I'm participating or not participating. I want to run through it. I want to kind of test and get an idea where you guys sit right now. What are you thinking about this? Good thing, bad thing, participating, or you're not participating? Let us know. Just throw it in there. I want to hear from you guys and hear what's going on. We have this from Dash says, hey, I'm worried about tax implications. Yeah, I mean, tax implications would be based on the value of the time of the airdrop. Charles Horn says, not going to lie, when Upload gave out the free silly NFTs, my first thought was run. Take your things out now. Nothing is free in life. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to say like that, I understand an exchange trying to promote themselves and having their NFTs and trying to do something a little bit different with the community. I didn't participate in it. Just I'm pretty busy, got a lot of stuff. Liz Taylor is all about no way, she's not in. Motivation for lifestyle change, all in. Hans Loaded is participating. Well, it's not 50,000. So Reiki says, well, what's the thing with the max 50,000 XRP? It's 50 million XRP, and it depends how many people are going to participate. So if you have 50 million people participating, you get one Evers, or maybe a little over, because it's a little bit over 50 million, right? So it's going to be distributed based on how many people actually claim. So based on the amount of people that again, remember the snapshot is going to happen on September 1. That's all you have to do. If you want to participate, and even if you don't want to participate, if you're self-custodying your XRP anyway, it'll be part of the snapshot. So I don't know what the period of time is. I do think if we go back, I think there was a period of time to claim. I thought I remembered seeing that somewhere. Trying to think exactly where I saw that, but I think there was a time frame, because you remember that someone like maybe Liz, who is self-custodying, is not necessarily going to participate, but again, will be part of the snapshot. So I wonder how that's going to sort of pan out. So maybe there's going to be a certain time you have to claim. We'll have to figure out how that's going to go. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work out. Wanted to get to a few more. No for me, dog. Charles Horn, it's a no. Sorry, it's a no. Ani says, happily accept all airdrops, then swap to XRP. Okay, participate if the ledger works. Flare had way more hype and nothing came from it. Yes, we got another yes from Grim, says participate, it's free. So we're getting a lot of no's here. XRP, what is that? Boricua Armies, not participating, but wish everybody good luck. Let's see who else we have. No way, especially after Flare, no way. Someone says no. Jared says he's going to participate, doing a way better job of explaining it than Flare. Yeah, it's a one drop, right? There's no like, well, if you do this and you do that and you tap your head and rub your belly, there's none of that weird stuff going on. So it is pretty cut and dry. We got another participation here. Sophie saying, imagine explaining airdrops to the tax lady. Yeah, well, that's another thing with the whole tax things. But there's software out there that helps simplify that and runs through everything, and it's really fantastic. So everybody's wishing good luck, though, even though they're not going to participate. Not opposed to the concept, just cynical. And I don't blame you for being cynical. Hell, we all should be cynical after all the stories we read on a daily basis of things going wrong from people who know better. And it's always a rough thing when you think about, from that perspective. Like, there's always something going on. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, hang on a second. So let me go back to that question about the 50,000. So that was a good point. So here's some key considerations. This is from the Evernode website. So key considerations: airdrop entitlements will be based on XRP balances up to 50,000. So if your balance is over, and this is so I think they can distribute it. So that's what you were asking about, the 50,000. Got it. If you hold more than 50,000 XRP, you'll need to hold it in a separate accounts to benefit from the excess balance. So I think this is the way of doing it more fair. If you hold 1 million XRP, you're going to have 50,000 in separate accounts. And again, I think what they're trying to do here is avoid the whales getting the majority of the airdrop. I think probably trying to do a little bit more on the fair side, so that, I mean, if you own 1 million, would you go through the hassle of moving your XRP? You might. I don't know. If you've got 5 million XRP, would you do that? It just makes it a little bit more simplified. You'd have to actually do some work before that. So that right there seems like to me an attempt. It was a great question you asked back there. I forgot who asked that, but a great attempt to sort of keep the whales from getting the majority of it and kind of keep it a little bit more level in the playing field a little more. If you want to benefit from that excess balance. So anything up to 50,000, again, they got their, do your own research, you get what you get. Might be nothing, it might be something. So that's kind of the way they're doing it. And it is that odd number, Evers to be eligible, and everything else we pretty much had there. So because we're launching the Hook sidechain, because that sidechain will include a burn to mint, where XRP holders can burn their XRP on mainnet and then mint a matching token on the Hook sidechain. We need a snapshot of the XRP ledger before the Hook sidechain. We're gonna have to get more on this, where you're talking about burning your XRP on mainnet. So got to figure out what that's all about. Until I have more details, hard to speculate at this point. So anyway, I'll leave it with that. But anyway, exciting development nonetheless. I want to jump into this right here. So, you know, the SEC has been they still have active lawsuits going on out there. They haven't stopped. They're like, it wasn't like they went after Ripple and it was like, hey, Ripple, exciting, we have the whole thing's over, and it's like, that's it, we're done. No, they're still pursuing. They're still after their litigation by enforcement here. Enforcement by litigation, I should say. So the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, they put out this tweet. Today we announced that our crypto asset trading platform, Bittrex, and its co-founder and former CEO, William Shahara, agreed to settle charges that they are operated an unregistered national securities exchange, broker, and clearing agency. And the funny thing is about this is that Bittrex closed up shop. They left. They're gone. They're out of the U.S. Why? Because someone as reckless as the SEC alleging. And the bottom line is, you're like, well, wait a minute, Chip, this doesn't make any sense. Well, why would they go ahead and settle when they're probably not selling, especially in after the whole Ripple debacle, right? When you had SEC going after Ripple and saying that XRP was a security. And what do we learn from that? That not only is XRP not a security, but probably applies to almost all the other cryptos, although it hasn't been named. But again, that's why it was a win for all of crypto. So you say, like, well, here's an exchange that was selling a lot of these tokens, and they're alleging that they were selling unregistered securities, and that was an exchange selling unregistered securities. Well, here's the thing: by settling, you avoid going into court, you avoid all the legal hassle. And does someone like Bittrex, who already left the United States and they're not even doing business here anymore, do they want to have an ongoing 1.5, 2 year, 3 year lawsuit going on and burn through, you know, with Ripple's over 150, it was 150 to 200 million. I haven't gotten a final count on that, but it's pretty ridiculous. I don't know if they put the actual amount here. I remember seeing it, but I want to quote it here. Where was the fine? Yeah, they don't even put the, but I believe it was like 20 million. Don't quote me on it. I don't know 100% there, but I love what crypto hero John Deaton said here. He said, hey, SEC enforcement director, of course, we've seen him in hearings. You pat yourself on the back for this settlement. How many investors did you protect from this settlement? Is this the one similar to the protection you provided with the BlockFi settlement? You know, the case where the SEC became one of the largest creditors in the BlockFi bankruptcy ahead of retail investors. Now, if you break that down right there, that right there is absolutely disgusting. The fact that the SEC, in a bankruptcy, you got secured, unsecured creditors, and you know who always gets paid first? It's never the little guy. Usually the retail investor is always the one that gets hurt. And really the SEC, what John's calling out here, is the fact that you're not actually doing one of your first tenets of the SEC, or one of the top three, which is protecting the investor, not retail investor, protecting all investors, but mainly the retail investor. That's why the SEC was founded. That's why it was put in place, to avoid scams. But here they became the largest creditor in the BlockFi settlement, ahead of what? So when the payouts happen, SEC gets paid first, ahead of the actual investors. He said, so are you proud of that result as well, considering that no one has more clarity in the space? One final question, and this is now he's addressing, this is the SEC enforcement director, which is Gerber Gruwal. That's his personal account. So first of all, he's hitting him on here is the SEC enforcement director. Now he's hitting Gerber Gruwal on his personal account. He's asking him directly, are you willing to answer whether the Hinman speech was screened and approved by the SEC's ethics office? Don't you think you should clean up your own house before you clean up Wall Street or Crypto Avenue? This is funny. It's like Wall Street or Crypto Avenue. I like that. Or are you guys above the law? And how come? And how about you come on Crypto Law US and answer a few questions, since you're a civil servant with nothing to hide? So he's calling him out the big time here. This is great. John Deaton continues to just amaze me on taking this on, putting out this making this public, and then hitting Gerber Gruwal directly on his personal account, asking him directly. So this is fantastic, and it really is. When I see something like this, I don't know if somebody dropped the amount in there, but I believe it was around 25 million. Maybe Jared thinks, yeah, someone could look that up. It was 25 million. You're like, wow, $25 million to settle, yeah. But if you take a look at what happened with the Ripple, it's 150 to 200 million. $25 million is a lot for any company, but they don't have the coffers that Ripple had, and they actually have the amount of money standing there and sitting there Ripple could have gone 200 million. It could have gone 300 million. They could have gone 350. But the idea was they stood up, and it's kind of interesting if you think about it. I will say this, that back in the day when Jeff and I were talking about this and workshopping it, when the actual SEC thing dropped, and we had Jay Clayton dropped it on his way out the house. I mean, yeah, it was actually dropped on the last day, but a lot went into it. There's months and months of back and forth with Ripple. You had Hinman come back to actually when this case was dropped. There was a lot going on there, but what Jeff and I said, and I remember saying that, someone like Jay Clayton's either going to be a hero or a zero. Like, why did he drop the case? And one of the things that, I remember saying was like, hey, we might be sending him a box of chocolates, because dropping this case might be the fastest path to clarity, because we saw what was happening inside of Congress. Now, the way it went down, the roller coaster ride and everything else, in a weird kind of way, it certainly did work out that way, but it wasn't without a lot of heartache, a lot of struggle, a lot of XRP holders being hurt, their 401k accounts, being tied up, a lot of stuff going on, personal stuff. A lot of it was bad about that, but in a weird way, I hated to be right about that. It was the fastest path to clarity. Did I think it would last 2.5 years? I never did. Thought it'd be over like a year and a half tops. Went 2.5 years. That's a long time. So I think that in itself is a lot, man. There's a lot going on there. I wanted to put this one on here too. This is another interesting post here. Another interesting development where we have. Let me see here. Is it this one? No. Let's see. Let's do this. Here we go. So MetaMan put this out at MetaLawMan. Of course, he's a practicing attorney, also went to Vanderbilt Law. So this right here, another shocking event, right? This just took me by surprise. I wouldn't say shocking, more like a surprise. But Senator Cyntia Lummis, she's a senator from Wyoming, just filed an amicus brief supporting Coinbase's motion to dismiss the SEC complaint. Interesting, because as a sitting member of Congress, a senator filing an amicus brief supporting Coinbase's motion to dismiss. Now, it would have been nice if Cyntia Lummis back in the day, or anybody else would have also, when filed an amicus brief on a behalf. But again, a lot of what's driving what we're seeing now has to do with the result that the SEC going after Ripple basically produced. That XRP, not a security. John Deaton heavily talked about this, the fact that there's no case law, there's nothing in 70 years since Howey that stands up that anytime the digital asset is the security. It's always been the scheme in which it's been packaged. A lot of people are having a hard time out there, especially a lot of legal minds. We became more legally minded than we ever thought we would because we started following amazing attorneys. We started listening what was happening, right? We had a horse in the race. We wanted to know how this thing was going to end. But he goes on to say that Senator Lummis is a co-sponsor of the Lummis-Gillibrand crypto regulation bill, which we've talked about here at length. And Senator Lummis's brief argues this, a couple points here. So number one, Congress has not granted the SEC authority to regulate crypto assets. That right there in itself is a giant boom. Congress absolutely has given zero authority to the SEC to regulate crypto assets, right? And if we take a look at and we think about, if we look at the fact that, let's say, that a digital asset is a commodity, it's not regulated by the SEC. So the fact is there is no jurisdiction anywhere where the SEC has any sort of bearing over top of this. Number two, defining the contours of crypto regulation in this country is a job for Congress, not the SEC. Okay, a strong argument in some way, but let's just face it. The SEC has been sitting on this, doing this regulation by enforcement for what, 2.5 years, 3 years now? Where's Congress been? Congress has been completely out of the picture. Yes, we're seeing movement now. Yes, we're seeing some stuff start to happen. But let's face it. I mean, we're past the bills. Let's get them out. I mean, finally out of committee, finally passed out through the House. They still got to go to the Senate where Cyntia Lummis is there. Let's see how her vote's going to come down on some of these bills because she's so nicely points out here that defining that the SEC, the job for basically regulating is up to Congress, not SEC. Great. Well, let's see some movement. What happened to these bills that were passed 2 weeks ago in the House, and what is the Senate doing to pass that, right? Number three. Yikes. There we go. Number three. So the SEC's claim that virtually all crypto assets are securities exceeds the SEC's authority, encroaches on Congress's lawmaking, and contravenous of the separation of powers. That's right. But, you're not going to be able to stop the SEC. But again, in an amicus brief, these are really strong arguments. And putting a new spin on the regulation by enforcement term, Senator Lummis declares the SEC cannot legislate by enforcement. And the whole idea, this is an interesting sort of terminology here with the whole idea of legislate, just because she can't go ahead and they're not creating their legislation is when you're creating new law. She's basically saying you can't. Just trying to throw out the dichotomy between these things. Regulation, you already sort of have the authority. You're regulating based on enforcement, right? Enforcement action. This here, I kind of like this because you can't legislate. In other words, you can't make up new rules for the game. That's not your job. That belongs to Congress. Excellent work by the lawyers at Jenner and Block who wrote this up. Well said, well done. And then we can list. We don't need to read it because we already went through that. But again, very well done. And let's see what else we want to do here. Moving right along here. Trying to see, we got a little time. Went a little long here. Okay, so this always happens. I'm trying to find my tweets here. Man, I thought I had them up here. Okay, here we go. So there's a little bit of a dust up. I want to play this. Let me go ahead and do this here. Let me do this here as I'm going through this. Alrighty, let's go. I'm gonna have to, what do I have to do to show this? Man, this is why it's fun when I have Jeff here, because I can sort of like get this thing running. But I saw a couple things. I want to go off on this a little bit here. I want to bring some, bring some personal. Okay. So what I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to have to share my screen. Let's see. And let's go to, there we go. This should work, guys. And tell me if you don't hear audio in this, because, okay, here we go. Here we go. I want to play this here. Man, of course I put this up here and everything goes crazy with my system again. So, okay, so we don't hear audio now, but let's do this. You guys to hear this. Tell me if you can't hear it. Yes or no in the comments, because I won't be able to tell. Here we go. But this is the digital asset investor. He says he finally says that the same congressman who never would call for an investigation of ETHgate corruption, despite all the video evidence and timelines, not calling Ripple evil after their SEC victory. Warren Davidson, wow, CBDCs are no different than any other technology like nuclear. They can be used good for evil. This is shameful. Let's look.
Not only is there this token XRP.
Okay, so let me know if you guys heard that. I'm going to go ahead and break here so we don't go too far into this, but I want to see if you heard it. But what he's basically going, and again, I was listening to this space for a little bit, but I didn't get to listen to the whole thing. And I was surprised and shocked a little bit by, still haven't seen anybody comment there. Anybody commenting? Sounds good. Okay, thank you for that. All right, so let's listen in. I'm going to back it up a little bit here, but let's listen to this whole thing.
Not only is there this token XRP, here's what we Ripple can do for you. And the creepy thing that I don't like about Ripple personally is that they're helping governments develop central bank digital currencies, which is evil. But that's part of the pitch that they're doing, right? So that's why it does look like, well, it looks like a certain amount of control being exerted by Ripple over how XRP can even function as a token within what Ripple's really trying to develop for the institutional investor. So the pitch deck really was different for them. And, you know, that made sense.
Okay, so I want to comment on this. So look, I mean, he gets the second part wrong, right? So the XRP, the CBDC, the only time XRP would come into use with the CBDC is if you're doing a cross-border payment, right? And the interoperability part, the CBDC itself, is more than likely going to built on a private ledger, a private XRPL. So you're not going to have, and again, they can separate because they're not going to make all these things that are going on with the government on a public type of a chain. It's on chain, but again, it's a private chain. It's private behind the scenes. So when he's talking about XRP and using the XRP token, he does get that bit of it quite wrong. But again, you know, you have someone in Congress, they're going to know every little aspect of it. But he's confusing the XRP token with the CBDC. They're really two different things. But where an XRP token would come into play is on the interoperability side. So when you're actually sending, let's say, let's just say, I don't know, any country, let's say like Singapore, right? You have a CBDC over there and you're sending it over to, let's say, the UK, right? So if you wanted to send it really quick, what would be the interoperability between, you know, the native, you know, CBDC there, and let's say that even if the UK had a CBDC, right, will be the, so that's where the XRP would come in. So the XRP would go ahead in the interoperability, it would convert to XRP, it would be there in 3 to 4 seconds and back to whatever the native currency, whatever the desired currency is. So XRP doesn't really have anything to do with this. Now, the first part of what he's talking about here, I agree wholeheartedly, right? So I got a little bit of pushback here too. He's saying the creepy part about Ripple, and he says, for me personally, is they're assisting governments with actually, you know, creating the CBDC. You know, I'm not a fan of CBDCs. I'm not. You know, I'm with Warren Davidson on this fact alone. I do agree with digital asset investor here. They can be used for good or evil. It's like a nuclear technology. Yeah, nuclear technology, you can either run power plant, which is good because here, I mean, where I live, you know, we have Turkey Point here down in Miami, which my power is nuclear, right? That's how I'm talking to you right now on my computer, right? However, you can make nuclear weapons too, right? I get what he's saying about that, okay? To me, the analogy is interesting, but I don't think the analogy is quite spot on. Because if you think about what can be used for good or evil, now when we're talking about governments here and we look at the last 3 years of how things burned to the ground, do we really think for a moment that if you can have programmability built in and you can say, well, you know, I mean, all the nonsense that happened here, and again, I was against all that as well. Got to be careful about how I language that, but I was against a lot of that. Okay, so and we saw the power shift, we saw the brutality, we saw it in a number of different countries. We saw them set up camps for people who resisted the public, or I would say the government line, right? We saw a lot of that going on. And, you know, I basically put this out there saying, hang on a second, I gotta switch screens here. But I commented on this a couple different times to different people, and people weighed in. It's kind of all over the board on this thing, which is I found pretty interesting. But let's take a look at this. So I said assisting countries in creating central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, isn't considered evil, even though it may allow governments to limit personal freedoms. What am I missing? Given the opportunity. Now, if you go into a CBDC and you can lock out the idea that it's built on the fact that it can never be programmable, okay? I don't hear any conversations about this at all. All I hear is it's a CBDC, and what do we know about CBDCs? Well, we know that whoever the centralized, and again, remember, CBDCs, that first word of CBDC is central. It's centralized. I'm not a big fan of centralized anything, but now you have, okay, it's built on a blockchain, but you have a centralized entity that is controlled by a government, and you think that they're going to be cool and be like, yeah, we understand it's programmable, but we're probably not going to use that until they do, right? So, you know, I brought up a certain number of brothers who, you know, made crematoriums in the 1930s, early 40s. And did they know that those crematoriums would end up in concentration camps? Probably not. Did they think that the technology they put together for cremating bodies would be used in a different way? Probably not. And there were other manufacturers that also this technology was used for bad, right? So you think about that. Did they think that was it? Probably not the use case. It was absolutely not the use case intended. But, you know, anything can turn on a dime. But if you have this, and if you want to look at history, and I'm not talking about history from 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago. I'm talking about history from 2 years ago. And we saw how exactly, if decentralization was in play, you wouldn't have had all these shenanigans. You wouldn't have had this, can never say that word. You wouldn't have these governments absolutely taking over and just force feeding stuff down your throat. That's just where I'm sitting on this. I'd love to see where you guys sit on this. But again, and what surprised me about digital asset investor is always about freedom and everything else. But because you're excited about a company that is going to back something, this is one of the things that Jeff and I always do here on the chain, is that we give our personal opinions. They're just our opinions. Do they mean anything? No. We know opinions are just like anything else. Everybody has one, right? Does it make it right? It does not. It's just a personal opinion. But my personal opinion is I stand on the side of freedom. I stand on the side of I don't like the idea of anything centralized. And why do you want to build something centralized? I don't even understand the reason for a CBDC. Almost all of currency and money today in value is absolutely 100% digital. So we're going to change the name of it so we can build in programmable features that can limit and erode people's freedom. Anders came in with, hey, technologies overall could be used for evil. Being against new tech because it could be used by someone evil in the future is not the way to go. I disagree. It's absolutely the way to go. Until you prove to me that you're gonna issue it to a government, but you've locked out all the features of programmability. I never believe even the U.S. government, what happened here. I don't believe for a moment any government, given the chance, is going to be able to do that. So I'm just saying that this is absolutely ridiculous and insane. Of course, there are thousands of here's another take, selling a gun to someone who later goes on to use the gun for murder isn't evil. You're providing a service or product. The service can use it for good or evil. We're talking about governments here, man. We're talking about governments who, in recent history, given the chance, were basically locking people that needed liver transplants. If they didn't have the you-know-what, they weren't getting it, okay? That was the official mandate. You were telling people you couldn't keep your job if you didn't get, if you weren't forced to take something, all right? To me, and you think that a year and a half difference is going to separate whether someone's going to do something bad or not, great. Let's hear Ripple come out and let's hear them talk about the fact that, hey, we're helping this government. Like I heard something was floated. I don't know if it's a rumor or not, but New Zealand. Now, if we look at what happened in New Zealand, again, do we trust that any government, a government in New Zealand, to do the right thing? I don't know. Maybe, hopefully, they do the right thing. I'm hopeful that all governments will do the right thing. Correct. It can be used for evil, but it must also be used for good. Probably equal amount of both. Yeah. Okay. But let's break this down. What a CBDC is. A CBDC is centralized token that's on a private blockchain that, in other words, you don't have any purview into. Okay. So what does it matter if it's using blockchain technology or not? How does that matter? How is that centralized notion? The fact that they could say, well, you know what? Listen, we don't like. It seems like you've been having a little bit too much sweets lately. You've been hitting the Danishes pretty hard, and your official weight came in a little bit over for your height. Your weight is a little bit over, so we're going to block any kind of sales of X, Y, and Z. People laugh and are like, they're like, yeah, Chip, that'll never happen. Oh, wait, what? It'll never happen? It just happened. We just all went through this recently, right? You couldn't go into a store if you didn't have a face covering. And then it later turned out that was a bunch of nonsense, right? But all of the facts were out there. The whole idea of 6 feet, that was out there. Everything's been debunked since, but don't worry, it was all in your interest. We're going to do it for your good because you weigh a little bit too much for your height and you're challenged in that department. Well, we might have to just limit something. Oh, wait a minute, you were outspoken about what? Wait, Chip said something about this? Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to restrict him and we're going to all of a sudden banish it. Now, if you think I'm joking about this, let me bring up a little solid point here. Let's bring up some other facts. How about the brand new digital token that was just announced, the stablecoin that PayPal released? Well, what did we find out about that? Well, wait, it turns out that there's two functions in there. One of them is freezing your wallet and the other one is deleting it. So the ability to freeze your stablecoin that a centralized company has, that they can freeze your stablecoin, which means you can't access it, you can't use it, and ultimately they can delete it. That was discovered pretty early on, I think within a day of release. That was in the code. That's a function. That's programmability, right? It's their own stable coin. It's not a CBDC. It's a stable coin. It's backed by real world assets, gold, whatever, right? It's backed by something. But you have to think about this. Do you want to be using something? If I Venmo something and I want to Venmo you some money now, what's the difference? So am I going to use their token where, you had an opinion about something, or you wrote this comment, let's say I'm paying you for, I don't know, let's just say I'm paying you for something that I purchased from you personally and I Venmo you some money. You wrote that comment that it was for X and we don't like X. So guess what? Frozen. We're going to freeze your account. You think I'm joking? Well, a year ago this time, it was discovered that they also had a disclaimer that said that they could fine you $2,500 for misinformation. What does that mean? For thought. If you had a certain thought in your brain or you expressed something, and that was deemed by the official fact checkers disinformation, guess what they could do? They could actually fine you $2,500. So this is where we're living. This is what happens when you put it in a centralized company, no different from an organization, and every company is free to do what they want. Let's just face it, for me, I've seen too many people get deplatformed. I've seen too many people because of the way they think or they have a contrary opinion. Let's suppose I believe the earth is, it's not a big sphere like everybody says. Let's say that I think it's more of a plane. Let's say that I think, wait a minute, Chip went against the official narrative. Not good. Okay, so we're going to limit or freeze your wallet because that's disinformation. We can't have that out in the world. So I just, to me, there's a lot about this whole thing that I find very, very tricky. I want to see if there's something else here. Yeah, here we go. And then I wanted to put this up here as well. This is, I know we're getting close on time. We'll probably go a little bit over today, but what the hell, I'm on a roll here. Let's do this. Let's put this up here. So Anders, this is on Digital Asset Investors tweet, but Anders came in and said the reason He says CBDCs are evil. CBDC can be a direct liability of the Federal Reserve, which has some major implications. See below. CBDC would also provide financial inclusion and almost free transactions, something Warren Davidson cares nothing about. Wall Street trade groups are pushing back on the against possibility of a digital dollar. The American Bankers Association said that a central bank digital currency would rewire the banking and financial system, and even if a CBDC accounts were capped at 5,000 per user, they would drain 720 billion in deposits, the ABA estimated. Warren Davidson answered that and said, in every dystopian future, money is corrupted from a stable store of value, and it's an efficient means of exchange into a tool for coercion and control. A CBDC is a tool for tyrants, the epitome of a permissioned network and opposite of DeFi, which is decentralized finance. China links CBDC with social credit. And if you want to look at, I mean, you can say what you want to say about this, but let's take the very first CBDC and who beat everybody to the punch, and they were just glorified. China was the one that beat everybody to the punch, right? They were the ones that released, they're so technologically advanced. Well, yeah, they're so technology advanced that they jumped on the fact to release a CBDC. Well, there are checkpoints in China. If you live outside the city limits, if you don't have the right QR code, you're not getting into that city. If you don't have the right social score, you're not getting gasoline. If you don't have the right social score, they tied the CBDC directly to the social score, which they're able to limit and prevent users from a multitude of things here. And then we have Moon Lambo says, do you realize a permission CBDC can still be open source? That means everyone on Earth can see what the rules are without question, even if the US government has control over it. You could then argue that the US government could change code and reduce financial freedom in some way, but that's the poor argument because government can do that right now, even if blockchain technology was never invented. If a CBDC is required by Congress by law, it's always will be open source. If it's always will be open source and anybody tries to sneak in some tyranny code into it, the people will know. Well, great, that's awesome if it's open source. Do we know it's open source when you're dealing with a government? I don't know. Look at this right here. Liz Taylor brings this up. They do it now. They froze the trucker donation banks accounts in Canada. They sure did. Another famous rapper here in the United States, JP Morgan bounced him from his account. They made up a good story, but it was because he had wrong thing. Sorry. He was speaking out against things that he believed in. I don't care if you agree with him or not, but in the US, we're protected under the First Amendment or freedom of speech. He has absolutely the freedom of speech. You say, well, it's a private company. A private company is debanking somebody. Yeah, a private company was debanking somebody. Somebody else that came out recently with an organization, a company where not only they'd be banking there for over 20 years, their kids have been banking there, everybody in the company was banking there. The company and everybody associated with it was bounced. Why? Because they came out with a documentary that questioned some things. And if you think that the first CBDC ever issued by China doesn't have negative implications, you're like, well, it could be used for good. It could be used for bad. Okay, but I just say look at the recent history, and I think you kind of know. Technology is a tool regardless of whether or not it exists. People in the country must always be diligent in the face of encroaching tyranny. CBDC technology does nothing to change that fact. I will be against any CBDC that isn't open source because citizens deserve to know what's in the code. This is to me, and again, a little bit surprising. I get what Moon Lambo's saying here. I don't agree with it. You're trying to rationalize that, well, if it's open source and we know what's in the code, this is the government we're dealing with. Have you guys been paying attention for the last 2 years? This is the government. This is every government on the face of the planet, every single one, without fail. Show me one that didn't force feed stuff down your throat, de-job you if you didn't go along with the right thing, all on based on conjecture and based on a scam. It was all a scam. It's all coming out, and the evidence was there from the beginning. Ivermectin, for example, right? I got it. I got prescribed ivermectin. What do we see in the just happened this week, a couple of days ago? The FDA finally came out and said, yeah, it could be prescribed. It was legal to be prescribed 2 years ago when I got it. Saved my life. Boom, instant recovery just like that. It was amazing. Couldn't move on the couch, couldn't put a thought together, brain fog, not feeling well. And when I came down with the C word, I will say, and made a rapid recovery, right? This is available out there. You know what it costs? It's open. So you want to talk about open source? What about things that aren't under big pharma anymore? What about things that are super cheap? Why do you think we didn't hear about epidemics in Africa? It was sold over the counter. You buy 6 months supply for about $1.50. Okay, there's no money in it. Everything leads back to money. Always follow the money. You want to see what's going on? You can ask your questions. Follow the money. I don't think for a moment. I'm sorry. I'm with Warren Davidson on this. I might be the outliner on this one, but I don't trust any government for any reason. They've never done well by the people, for we the people. It's always been for the we the few, we the elites, we the ones that are going to control and lay down the rules. And even some of the good people that you sent off to represent you and your government, they spoke a good game, they talked a good game, but when they got there, they got taken behind the woodshed. And what happened? They got read the Riot Act. And what did that look like? Hey, we appreciate you coming in here trying to make a dent. We appreciate your excitement, but here's how it works here. And they lay down the rules. This is so if you don't go along to get along, then they put them in compromising scenarios and situations where, oh, we got something on you. You can go out to the microphone and bitch all you want and complain, and we're going to take down this thing. The red team comes out, oh, they're angry. Then the blue team comes out. And meanwhile, they're all having parties behind the scenes. They're all living it up. They're all drinking champagne together and giving the illusion that there's some difference going on. You know, judge for yourself. That's my stance on it. I'm sticking with it. I just go with my gut. I don't know where you guys feel about this. I see that Jacob's Ladder says speaking my truth. I see there's agreement. I want to see somebody that disagrees with me in the comments. I always like to see that. Charles says Sweden was about it. AI will kill us all. That's another topic altogether. That's a very big possibility. I leverage AI a lot. I use a lot of AI in everything that I do. I would just say that I'm pretty steeped in AI, pretty heavily steeped in AI and a lot of creativity on it, leveraging tons of platforms and doing the best I can to extend my creativity in the things that I do. If you want to look at today's thumbnail for this, that was created with AI, right? So it's a couple different scenes in AI and a couple, and also in Photoshop and a bunch of different things. So the way I created that was 2 different pictures overlaid with a bunch of other overlays on top of that. And that's how I built that thumbnail for today's, but that was completely crafted in AI. Now I had the theory thing about AI. The way I look at it is if you put crappy prompts into AI, you put bad input, you're going to get bad output. If you don't understand how to leverage something like a chat GPT, there's other ones, ton of other ones out there. It's all based on the prompting. And if you don't know how to edit, and if you don't know how to disseminate between good and bad copy, good grammar, bad grammar, yeah, you're going to probably have subpar without a tone, without a voice. But again, the way I leverage it is, even working on a video that I was working on, being able to tell it, here's what I'm working on, here's what it's about, giving a ton of long list of instructions. I want a shot list. I want you to give me a shot list. Here's what it is. It was for one of my, working on a video for one of my songs. You guys can listen to my music down there. It's at No Joy Yet, but you can listen to that. It's all my original music. It's in the comments below. But I was creating something for Dancing on a Grave. Always had a concept, but it would have taken a pretty big budget to shoot of what I envisioned. But with AI, I'm able to create something. Is it 100% there? It's not. Hopefully, I'll get maybe a sample of it. I don't think it's not exactly what, I don't think I'm going to be able to 100% achieve what I was looking to do, but give it a year, give it 6 months, give it 3 months, and I do believe it will be there. So I do believe that just with every new technology, I've always been an early adopter in it. I'm not an early adopter in CBDCs. I think I've made that pretty clear, right? Just my opinion, just one guy's opinion. And out of all the crypto YouTubers out there, especially in the XRP space, I might be sitting on an island with Jeff, right? Jeff and I are pretty much in lockstep about this, but I would love to hear your comments below. Do you guys support CBDCs? Are you going to support the airdrop for Evers? I want to know that too. I just wanted to see where people stand on this. What are you guys thinking? So Papa Bear, thank you. He says, spot on. And, coming, after all you've gone through the past 3 years, Papa Bear, I totally can agree with you there. Agree with Chip, but we have CBDCs are programmable. with good levels of freedom and privacy so that they can work. Yeah, I agree with that, but I want to hear from the company that's going in, like a Ripple, saying, hey, this particular company is adopting a CBDC. However, all controls and programmability has been locked down. And that goes to Moon Lambo's point of like, hey, if it's open source and we can see what's going on, but is there going to be open source? Is the government going to use anything open source? I don't know. There's too many. There's more questions that I have answers. I am open to the fact, would I be for a CBDC if it was locked down? I love what's going on in Palau. The thing about Palau is it's a stable coin, right? And it uses a Ripple wallet. And we've shown it here. You see that Ripple wallet in somebody, because most of the Palauans live outside of Palau, right? They grow up, they get to be 18, they go off to university somewhere, they go branch out, and there's more Palauans that live outside of their home country than actually live in Palau itself. But I do support the idea of a stable coin. If you want to release a stable coin that doesn't have programmability, but it does use a lot, it does cut a lot of the issues out. So you're on a small, tiny island, and you want to move money, especially a lot of people who live off the grid, and they want to send money back. You think about them sending money back to, family or friends. The huge fees they got to pay now is ridiculous. But using this Ripple wallet with a stable coin. Now, funny part about this is this a test? Is this a test net? Much the same way we saw Songbird be the test net for what came out with Flare. Think about it. Palau uses the US dollar, right? That's their currency. Can it work in a scenario like that? Yeah, absolutely. It's been proven. You can see that with Palau, a stable, coin, being able to, and that's the whole idea, is to cut down on these payments. So someone has a Ripple wallet and they're living, let's say, in Europe, and they went ahead and they want to send some, euros back home. Boom, click, 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 5-6 seconds, you have it. You're done. Point to point for a couple drops. That right there is a great use case that I can support and get behind. This programmability, unless you're going to go in and have full disclosure when it's implemented and you don't lock it down, I'm sorry, I'm never going to be trusting of any government. Just given the history, going back hundreds, thousands of years, it doesn't work out well. Until this experiment, tiny little experiment by a bunch of colonists that banded together, a bunch of misfits that said, hey, no, we're not going to pay your taxes. Hey, no, we're not going to do that. And when, the birth of the United States and the idea of the formation of a constitution in the U.S., I urge you to read the Federalist Papers. If you want to really have a good read, go through the Federalist Papers. It's years and years of the battle of what eventually became and ratified by all the states, which was the U.S. Constitution. There were some knockout, drag-out battles, man. I mean, I would love to do that maybe on a separate podcast, but cover a lot of what happened on the way to a constitution. It didn't happen immediately out of the gate. 1776 is when the actual, the Declaration of Independence was declared, but it wasn't until many years later that the Constitution came into effect. But again, it's the only document, and since then, before the U.S., everything was tyranny. There was no real democracy, right? It was all tyrants. It was all, every single country on the face of the earth for thousands of years was led that way. An experiment started where they envisioned what can go off the rails as we move this country forward. They try to envision every possibility. They couldn't envision technology. They weren't thinking about CBDCs. But again, I'm also against the Federal Reserve. Why? Because in the Constitution, the founders and the framers were against a centralized entity, especially one that charges debt back. There's a whole rant I wanted to go on. Maybe I'll get to that tomorrow night. But I wanted to go on with centralized banks and a little bit of U.S. history on that as far as some of the things that have gone off the rails. And again, all I'm showing here is the history always repeats. And the bad stuff repeats over and over and over again. So we're always going to get to that space where it always comes up. Charles Warren says, I see a possibility of a world where stable coins are for most folks, but if you are the government, Dole, you use a CBDC. There you go. Yeah. And again, you have to ask yourself the simple question, why CBDC? Why a centralized bank digital currency? We already have digital currencies. Oh, so is the allure the programmability? Because right now, if I send money to somebody, or if I move money, if it's under 10,000, it's under the radar. But you're talking about every single transaction on a blockchain that can be monitored, that can be categorized behind the scenes to know what you're doing with your money. Okay, so let's suppose there is no evil intent. Let's suppose that a government says, hey, we'll be the first ones, raise their hand over here. Hey, we'll be number one. We want to make sure that what Moon Lamb was talking about, we're going to lock down the code. There are no programmable functions in here. It's simply a digital representation of our currency. Great, check. Now, what's going on behind the scenes? Well, they can still go ahead because every transaction you have, it's tied to your name. They know everything you're doing and buying everything. What's to stop that from finding out other ways? You see, like when you put this kind of power and this kind, because right now, is anybody paying attention? No. But if it's always on a blockchain forever, everything you do is tied to that. There can still be nefarious things going on behind the scenes that don't include necessarily programmability. So I'm just saying that anything that's digital, we already have a digital dollar right now, because if there was a bank run today, even if 25% of the people showed up at a bank that actually banked there, I'm talking about like a local community branch bank, there's not enough money to cover. That would create a collapse. Now, if everybody in the country did that, I don't care what bank it is. I don't care if it's Wells Fargo, biggest bank in the US, JP Morgan, big bank, Bank of America, it would cause a bank run. That money is not physically, there's not enough money physically that's been printed to cover that. It's digital now. So why CBDC? Makes zero sense to me. People can go along for the ride. I'm not on that train. I got off that train. I'm going to stand in opposition to it. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm holding pretty tightly on my thoughts right now. Things can change, and I'm open to change. I've changed my opinion over the years. Especially when I was a kid, I hated asparagus. Asparagus was the weirdest. It was a weird sort of I didn't like the texture of it, but I grew up, and then, you go to a nice steakhouse, you get a nice prime rib, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you get some asparagus, and it's crunchy and beautiful and tasty, and it's great. Otherwise you overcook it, it becomes a stringy, nasty mess. I'm open to change my mind, just where I stand right now. That's where I am. I want to thank everybody here. Biggest, best, brightest that we have in the crypto space. You guys come in here. You guys have opinions. You'll let me know exactly how you're feeling, what you're thinking. I love that. And we love the fact that let's see, remember, Alchemist, remember, Ripple evil, Ripple win. There you go. Charles, one not against, don't get me wrong, not in favor of CBDC anyway, but I think there's a possibility where we all get forced into it, although that's likely what we'll see. So Jim D says USA lost its republic after Civil War when it created United States in the yeah, of course, but there's other things that have come out about that, Jim D. I'm gonna send you a couple things on that too that makes some sense. Ray Run says thank you and good night. So that's all we have. Asparagus CBDCs. Now you're talking about something interesting. There we go. Asparagus. I don't even like the word asparagus. It's a weird thing. It's a weird word. I don't even know what it is. And if you ever speak a different language, I'd like to know what asparagus sounds like in other languages. It just doesn't sound like, let's see, what can we name it? Can we name it this, that? No, let's name it asparagus. And that's what we have. But anyway, before I rant on for another 20 or 30 minutes here, I'm going to go ahead and end this puppy. Thank you guys for coming here. I appreciate it. Thank you for all the support of On the Chain over the years. Really appreciate that. Always speak your opinion with your truth for yourself. If you disagree with me, I want to know in the comments. I want to see your take on it. This is just my truth. It doesn't mean it's everybody's truth. It's just the way I feel about it. And Jeff and I are always going to be true to ourselves. If we disagree with something, maybe something Ripple did, we'll call them out for it. We're fanboys, but we're not 100% in on anything. I'm a fanboy of Apple. When Apple does stupid things, I call them out too. I just call it the way I see it. Will I be favorable? Probably, yeah. Will I have biases in there? Absolutely. But, I stand for freedom. I stand for, decentralization. Decentralization is freedom. It's going to win in the end, and everybody's terrified, from governments, politicians, companies. They're all threatened by it, which is why I love it. So that's all I have, guys. I will see you on the next one tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Be here. Let's go ahead and break some other stuff down. Take care. Have a great weekend. Talk with you soon. Chip out.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.